Okay, so after the arcs that I talked about, the three arcs, innovation, pioneering, and strength, let's go back to motifs, and I can continue to talk about the other motifs. Okay, so after the hero, the next motif is a grid. Now, a grid can be perceived, you can think of it in many different ways. This is a more symbolic one in the way that I wanted to include this into as a motive. With the with grid, the way I the way one of the ways I would visualize it is think of an entire region in space as though you are in outer space. There is darkness all around you. There are stars. You can think of all these things, and you see a grid made out of glass, and you can see the various horizontal, all the interconnected lines of this grid, and you can see it move towards the horizon. Maybe there is some distortion on this grid. Maybe there are certain other effects on this grid. In this case, I would imagine a transparent grid. So where would this grid, is there somewhere that this grid leads to? So what ways can you think of? Another way you can think of it is you can imagine an atmosphere of different colors. You can imagine different ambiences and imagine certain grids. Like I said, this is a more symbolic one, and you can kind of imagine and think in what way, in what sort of situation this grid might speak to you. And I wanted to include this, even though there isn't a very direct sort of archetype related to this, but I still decided to have it as something much more abstract and symbolic and somewhat mathematical. I guess you can think of it in that way, in the sense that you can think of different topologies. You can think of it in different ways related to geometry and topology, and other ways related to space, and you can think of them in that way. Again, more symbolic. So, okay, let's get to the next one. So the next motif is galaxy. Now, galaxies are very beautiful. The way, for me personally, I've described a dream where I saw an entire sky completely packed with stars and galaxies and enormous galaxies, and seeing stars in that way. So galaxies are very beautiful, and really, there are in a single galaxy there can be so many, an innumerable amount of stars present in that. So there is so much. These galaxies are so, there is so much happening in them, and when you look at them from the perspective of a big picture, you realize how it is, and all the things that they contain. And so yeah, with galaxy you can visually imagine this in a way that, if you breathe. Okay, imagine this in a way that there is a galaxy or a cluster of galaxies that you can see, and not in a very small sort of way, like, and imagine an entire galaxy sort of covering a large part of your field of view, or a large angle in the sky, and you can imagine other galaxies, and you can imagine all these other stars being present there. Again, very symbolic, a very interesting cosmic aesthetic that is present in this. Very beautiful and full of all kinds of, so many different things, so many different uh, cosmological things present in these galaxies. So again, a nice symbol to an emotive that you can think of, and can you think of it in different ways. I wonder in what ways can you use your intuition to think of this motif in a different way. So it's kind of interesting, I guess. So okay, so the next one is wind or breeze. very something I find very comforting. There's something very comforting and nice about wind, the way things move along with the wind. You can see trees moving with the wind. You can see someone's hair moving softly with the breeze. Very soft sort of beauty can be present in that. You can see the way things almost do dance in their own ways with the wind and with the breeze. It's very nice, and yeah, you can think of it um, in I think it's an interesting aesthetic the way it works, and as a motif, I guess it can be applied. You can think of it in yeah, you can think of it in different ways. Maybe there is a certain element of energy to it, that there is some energy that creates all this movement that is created by wind. So can you think of it in that way? Hmm. So yeah, that is one of the other motives. Okay, so next is related. So it is rain. Again, something that has, it can, a simple experience that someone might be having, it can be enhanced by rain. You could be in a place just doing something simple, and that rainy environment, all the sounds, all the way that smell of rain, the way things appear darker, those gray clouds, maybe there's a rainbow, maybe there's some um, in some broken uh, times, you can certain at certain times you can see the sun in some way. You see these storm clouds, and again, it can create a very nice ambience, and it's something that's very beautiful. You can think of it in a more of a stormy sense, like when there are storms. Again, like I talked about with when the way trees move with the rain, and yeah, I think it can create a very nice aesthetic. And the way you can think of this, um, maybe there is more symbolic meanings to this. You can perceive this in different ways in how you want to symbolically perceive this. Maybe maybe it's in some sense, if it's a more stormy type of rain that you want to think about, maybe it's a sense of certain chaotic energy, in the sense that there is a certain burst of energy that you might feel, that in a way that it creates a sort of a storm, and in a constructive storm, in a way that you you can you can you feel all that, you feel energetic like a storm. So you can think of it in that way, or you can think of it in a more of an aesthetic sense, more of a comfort sort of sense. There's that comfort that you can feel in that rain environment. So you can think of it in that way. There are many other meanings that you can perceive from this. So I think it's an interesting motive, and which lends itself to, that you can perceive this in many different ways and apply its symbolic meanings to it. So there's a lot of possibilities with this motif of rain as well. Okay.